Welcome to From Stuck to Scaled, Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, your guide to navigating growth, transformation, and success in today's ever-changing business landscape. Each week, we'll dive into proven strategies, real-world case studies, and actionable insights designed to help small and mid-sized business owners scale smart, lead stronger, and grow faster. Let's get you unstuck and on the path to sustainable, scalable success. Now your host, Julio Gonzalez.
Welcome to another episode of From Stuck to Scaled, and I am your host, Julio Gonzalez. Today, we're unraveling the high productivity secrets pulled straight from the dynamic world of film and television. Our guest is Steven Puri, a dynamic leader and seasoned professional with a wealth of experience in fostering high-performance teams and driving productivity. Steven brings invaluable insights about the intersection of creativity and efficiency in the workplace. His experience goes beyond traditional business practices, illuminating how we can leverage lessons from film and TV to enhance our organizational culture and productivity. Tune in as he shares his secrets for cultivating a thriving environment that sparks innovation and scales success. And let's welcome Steven to the show. Welcome, Steven.
Ooh, I hope we can make it engaging and maybe educational episode.
Yeah, I am sure it will. I'm very excited to talk flow with you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you've done, because that I'm sure is going to interest a lot of people. So tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, so for those playing along at home or in their car, here's the fun thing about why you should listen to me. I'm one of the few people you'll meet that's been a senior executive at a couple motion picture studios, but also raised over $20 million of venture, run 3 startups, 1 successful exit, 2 failures. It's true, you lose more, you learn a lot more from the failures. And along the way, picked up a lot of tips by working alongside high performers, some who went on to have sustainable high performance in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and some who burned out and at 35 were like, I just would like to pick apples in the Pacific Northwest. I'm done with this high pressure thing.
I'll go pick apples.
I'm just saying some apples are delicious. Steve Jobs picked apples, right?
Yeah.
So the fun thing I hope we can get to today are some really actionable ideas about here are ways to create for yourself and your team sustainable high performance, like healthy productivity. And there'll be some fun stories along the way, So sit back, drink whatever you're drinking. Here we go.
In prepping for this episode, one of the things that came to mind is, and one of my many certifications and things that I've done over the years is project management. Mm-hmm. The level of coordination that has to go into, any kind of film, TV, kind of thing, and bringing that down to business, I think translates directly around that coordination. So talk to me a little bit about, that team building and that, we're going to get to flow, but that flow that has to go into putting something together like a major motion picture.
Well, let me tell you, I feel very fortunate that I've seen what success looks like and been part of some success and some failures, in both the film and in the tech startup world. And the similarities, how those two map to each other, are greater than most people realize, because films are basically startups. They are a seed of an idea that someone develops to the point you get some money, and then you use that money to further develop the idea, hire people. At a certain point, you are all betting that you can spend a lot of money on a consumer product that'll be widely adopted and people will give you billions of dollars for, right? And it's funny how those trajectories are similar. So one other part of this that is interesting about film is that it's true. COVID was a shock to the system. Suddenly we're all, Zoom is a verb. We can't be under the same fluorescent lights 12 hours a day, would kill each other and all that. And people had to come up with all these terms for remote work, distributed teams, asynchronous teams, and in film, you would not really use those terms because film has been doing this for 100 years. Every film begins remote. It's writers writing in their homes or coffee shops or their writing partner's living room, right? And at a certain point, one of their ideas gets the attention of some money, some producer or studio gets, and you open a small production office, and then 2 days a week, you're in there meeting with customers. What do the characters wear? You're courting directors. You're talking to location scouts. Could we shoot this in Montana? What about, Bratislava doubling for Montana, right? And, then you're in production and it's like RTO. It is all day, all night. You're on set, you're on location for months on end. Goes back to hybrid, picture editors, sound editors working, in dark rooms and eventually remote. So that whole arc of remote to hybrid to RTO to hybrid to remote has happened in film on pretty much every film for 100 years, but you never call it that.
Right.
You would use the terminology of, oh, you're in development. Oh, you're in pre-production, you're in prep. Oh, gotcha. Oh, you're in photography, you're in principal. Oh, got it. Oh, you're in post, right? So it's interesting to see how the rest of the world had to adopt to some of these things where leaders in film, they know how to lead through remote and hybrid periods because it's kind of what you've done, right? And ICs know how to contribute. Here's how we worked as a team when we're only in the office 2 days a week, and the rest of the time, the location scout is in Montana scouting, and the customer is at custom houses, right? That sort of thing, right? So I found it to be super interesting how similar, those are, and how many people, sort of didn't realize that. And that gives you some insights into, well, what do successful teams do? And the teams that stay together, because like in film, you do have some groups of people that are like, hey man, this is my cinematographer, this is my editor, da, da, da. We do movies together. We love each other. We have a way of working that's sustainable. I'm going to do this in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s, and you have others where it's like, I will never work with that blankety blank ever again, and every movie you see, they have a different team around them, right? And that's telling, right?
Yeah, because effective teams get in sync.
Yeah.
So you don't have to think through, what is Steven going to want from this scene, from this whatever.
Yeah.
I know what he wants, and hey, Steven, let's do that thing again, and repeat because we've worked together in the past. So yeah, effective teams working together, make a tremendous amount of sense in a repetitive type of setting.
Here's something, because I know you and I have talked about this prior to the today's session, is when you start to think about, okay, I have a small business, I have a team, it's not a large organization, whatever it is, right? Like, what are best practices now that repetitive tasks are really well done by LLMs, which people conflate with AI. They basically call large language models AI when there's not, there are other things in AI, right?
Everything is AI.
Everything is AI, exactly. But LLMs are what people are mainly talking about now. And let's sort of set the table. And I know there are a lot of people talking about this, but we're going to go somewhere interesting with this. So LLMs are basically Google autocomplete on steroids.
Yes.
So Google autocomplete is like you're typing, hey, Mr. Gonzalez, would like to send you, and it's like, oh, the next word is probably this, or the last 3 letters of the word you're typing are probably this. And LLMs are basically just that, saying, well, the next word is probably this, and the next sentence is probably, because I've read most of the internet, the statistically probable, this is the next idea you want. So when they give you back answers to your prompts, it feels like thought. You're like, oh my God. But in reality, they're like, here's the stuff other people have written about this a lot. And I'm just telling you, like, when people say the weather is, the next word is 62% rainy, 12% sunny, 40, I can pretty much guess what you humans want because you keep saying the same stuff, right? So that's what LLMs really are, even though it gives you the illusion of thought, because you're like, oh, it's just like Jerry would say, So now that said, how does this apply to our conversation about, hey man, I lead a team, I own a small business or something like that. If where you are putting your attention is on the tasks that LLMs do very well, there are certain tasks that do follow patterns. That's what an LLM is great for. So I was talking to a group of tech salespeople, the other day, and the entire room, they're looking at, well, how much of my outbound, how much of my daily churn of like is suddenly better done by an LLM than even the CRM that I've been using with some sort of outbound service. Like now it's like personalized. And you, rather than fighting like, oh God, how do we implement this? Have an amazing opportunity to say, okay, so how do I devote that amount of my team's resources that used to be done on this, that an LLM can do better, and have it do something the LLM cannot do? Because then you ask yourself, well, what is the LLM bad at? Which really is what's the advantage that I can exploit that maybe my competitors are not, because they're just still excited. They can talk to Chat GPT and it can tell them like, well, you and Julio went to the same college, so you should like write him a thing saying like, we both went to Stanford and he'll love you. Everyone's getting the exact same slop emails where it's like, I looked at your LinkedIn profile and you and I both have ears. We're very close to each other, Who cares? So there's an opportunity there to say, what is it that humans still do best? And it is really around a certain kind of creativity, which is not necessarily a pattern matching. And that creativity doesn't mean I can paint well. It means when I think about our organization could be working with Mr. Gonzalez's organization, there's something deeper there than my LLM scraping your LinkedIn page and going, hey, we both worked at Stanford. There's something deeper to say, well, now I can go and think, what is the actual email that speaks to the problem they have? Because I saw in the news last week, they put in a huge order for yellow paper, and we are a paper manufacturing company, right? We're a paper supplier or something. And that's out of the ordinary for them. There's something going on internally over at Gonzalez Industries that requires that. How do I speak to that and go, hey, you have a pain point, like you ran out of blah, 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 and I know this, and that's the one that you're going to respond to, because you get the 10 emails, incoming sales emails about, we both went to Stanford, we both have ears, we both wear glasses, you're like slop. But you get the one that goes, yeah, you figured out why we're ordering yellow paper all of a sudden. That comes because someone thought deeply about organization, and maybe wrote an interesting email. So to tie this off, because I can see you're about to say something, to tie that off of the bow, the opportunity there is to say, let LLMs do what they do well, and let it free you up to say, hey, team, let's devote our resources to that creativity, that deep work that actually makes everyone go, oh my God, how did they think of that?
Yeah, I just, I do Friday networking meetings, and we had this whole session on AI, and everybody just goes to the LLM. Mm-hmm. And yes, there's value, to the LLM. I'm not saying that there isn't, but the greater value is what else can AI do, to your point. And, when I talk about AI, I talk a lot about trending, mm-hmm. using the AI to identify trends that we may not be able to see. And in your explanation on the yellow paper, it's making those connections, right? So if your AI is trained, to look at news from, your clients and is well trained on what you do, to have it make those connections for you, that is where I think that, the greater value is, at least today, from an AI perspective.
In some cases, you're going to get a prediction based upon past patterns, which often does not actually speak to a revolutionary idea.
Right.
So it may be great to say like, well, in the past, other companies have ordered yellow paper because they, but to really understand, to write that email where, the CEO of Gonzalez Industries goes, oh my God, this guy gets it. This is the one I'm going to respond to. LLMs are not great at that. They're great at going, well, in 3 other cases that I read at McKinsey studies, yellow paper points to, Eastern European republics, and you're like, true, but not helpful. So I'm going to push back a tiny bit on that, which is, I think there's a space in there to stand out, which is, okay, great, do all the repetitive work for me so I can spend an hour looking out the window and go, you know what our competitor's doing? This is how we counter that. And then that, when you walk into the staff meeting, and you've been in these staff meetings, everyone does a little stand up where it's like, yesterday I worked in so-and-so, today I'm going to do this. And I'm not blocked. What did you do today? Like, you want to poke your eyes out and just die on the spot. But when someone says like, you know what, I looked out the window for an hour and I went deep and I thought about like patterns in history and what we could do in our competitor. And I think we should do this. And everybody's head swivels around and goes, dude, what Julio's, we should leave the meeting now and go build that before someone else figures it out. Like, that's the meeting where you build $1 billion company, not the one where everyone's like, yep, I checked off my 100 sales calls. Great. Okay, whatever.
Yeah. So AI, I think, is definitely giving us the opportunity. Mm-hmm. I say opportunity because not everybody will take the opportunity to have more time, to be better teams, to work, better together. Collaboration's been a buzz term for a long time, but I think that now we have a better chance at successful collaboration. And again, that's something that in the film industry, you have to collaborate because it all has to come together. Tell me a little bit about your experiences around those better teams, more effective collaboration, that you've been through from a film perspective and that you've brought down into industry.
Yeah. Well, you actually brought up flow in your introductory question, and I didn't really address that because I was so excited to talk about, let's set the stage about some of these other things, right? So let me dive into that a bit and then bring that back to how that leads to contributions on creative teams, right? And I'll tell you this is going to be somewhat objectionable. I'm going to say it, which is, it was interesting working in film where I was very fortunate to work with most of the top action writers, like, the kind of movies I worked on: Die Hard 5, Transformers 1 and 2, Star Trek 11, Eagle Eye, blah, blah. And when I was an executive vice president at DreamWorks with Kurtzman Orsi, like Alex Kurtzman, Bob Orsi, like, these are great guys. These are guys who wrote Mission Impossible 3, The Island, the Zorro movie, tons of stuff. And there are about 12 of those guys, mainly guys. There's one girl, Lita, but mainly guys who write those $1 million, $2 million action scripts, right? And it is interesting because at that level, there is a level of understanding about character that you don't get in most writers. Like when I was an executive at Fox, you're a VP to studio. All the agents know that you work on action movies, some are big movies, right? So every writer who wants to write those, tries to get in and pitch you their thing, right? Read the script. So here's the thing is, so many of those middle range writers, they write from having seen movies. So as you read their stuff, as you hear them pitch, you were just clocking like, okay, so that's the beat he stole from, Mission Impossible. Oh, okay, that's the Jack Reacher scene that he's redoing here. It's that sort of thing. Okay, he's doing the Die Hard jump off the building thing. And you can feel that when you're an audience member. Audience members don't necessarily articulate it about the authenticity of a character, but you can feel where it feels like it's derivative. It's like a photocopy of a good film, as opposed to a great writer who says, man, I've dug inside this character. Let me tell you what this guy or girl's about. And then I'm going to position an antagonist who is perfectly situated to poke the weakness of this character that I'm making you fall in love with. And here are the obstacles. Here's how that conflict is going to play out, right? And it all is sort of a character-driven experience because it comes from a deep understanding of character. So that's very rare. Now, those guys, and again, I say guys because it's out of those top 12, it's basically 11 guys, right? Those guys have ways of getting inside character that I think are very interesting, right? And this is where this concept of being in the zone, being in flow, being, we're not just like writing stuff. It's like, well, the next scene is probably that thing that happens, and, blah, 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 Star Trek, whatever. So let me, for a moment, if it's fair, just set the stage. So when I say flow or flow state, we all know that we're talking about the same thing. Is that okay?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. So, and I want to credit anything smart that I say on this is because we have the benefit of people who've spent their lives researching this and have come back to say, oh, you want to understand how music affects this? You want to understand how distractions work? And like Near and Cal and, Kotler and, have all contributed. So let us be grateful for them. So that said, there was a Hungarian-American psychologist, this guy Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who had a thesis. He said, there's something about when you speak to high performers in very different disciplines, actors, artists, athletes, scientists, inventors, they talk about the highly concentrated state where they do the thing that makes them famous, that we all know them for, right? They talk about it in very similar ways, even though what they do for a living is very different. What is up? There's something to that. And sort of like Prometheus, who wanted to go up, get fire from Mount Olympus and bring it down to the rest of us and go, hey guys, this is what these people do. This is how Michael Jordan talks about being in the zone. It's just hitting the ball, or Einstein talks about it, or Picasso talks about it. I was up all night working on Guernica, and here it is. I've captured the horrors of war, but I forgot to, eat or sleep or go to the bathroom, whatever. So at the end of his research, he wrote a book, Flow. It's the seminal work on this. It is why we call it a flow state. And he said the greatest thing. He said, I chose this word flow because it was the most beautiful metaphor for what I found. We are all on the river, paddling to move ourselves forward. But if you align your boat with the current, it carries you. It magnifies your efforts, and you go further and faster. And he said, that is what these high performers have figured out how to do, and to do it repeatably. They call it different things. He acknowledged, he's like, I'm coming up with the word flow, but I've heard from all of them, there are different ways of being like in the throes of this creativity, in the zone, like Michael Jordan would say, And it's fascinating when you read what he wrote, which is now 40 years ago or something. He's like, they all talk about this state where time sort of falls away. They're not looking at the clock. Distractions fall away. You're not continually looking at your phone, which is a big problem for me, or opening up a YouTube video or whatever, another problem for me. He said, you do your best work in a concentrated amount of time. And at the end of that, you often feel a sense of uplift or joy as opposed to a sense of depletion. It's not like, oh God, I'm so exhausted from doing that, let me go to bed. It's like, whew, I feel great, And he said, they have techniques that they use to get into these states, and their trainers and their coaches have ways of getting them into flow, right? Which we can talk about, obviously, because I know a lot of your audience are, team leaders and business owners and, are looking for that. And it's interesting when you realize in that state where the world kind of falls away, you can do things that you didn't think were exactly possible. And you do have more of those ideas where you're like, oh, this changes the trajectory of our business. Like we should do that, as opposed to, well, I returned all my Slack messages, done for the day. Like what?
Yeah. You are listening to From Stuck to Scaled. Our guest today is Steven Puri, and we are talking about flow. And Steven, I think one of the differences between very successful people and I'll say everyone else is that they have the means, the training, the support to get into that flow state. And I'll give you the perfect example. Last night, I was very much in flow.
Oh, cool.
I sat down at my desk and I accomplished so much that I needed to do. And it was just, and I was excited, like you were just saying, I was excited,
you felt uplifted.
to have, absolutely. I got so much accomplished, and it was like, wow, and it's like, that was 15 minutes, right? But the very successful people have that ability to get into that flow state. So tell us a little bit about, how they're able to achieve that, to find more consistent success.
Yes. Okay. So if we agree that this is an amazing experience, and by the way, the first time I experienced a flow state, I had never heard the term flow state. I just had what was that kind of thing? I was here in Austin and I was going to San Francisco. The next day I was going to meet with my team, and there was an idea I had that with my hacky Figma skills, I was like, you know what, on the flight, I'll put together a version of this idea so I can show it to everyone tomorrow. And if they like it, we can all polish it, make it better, right? So get on that, Alaska runs that nonstop from Austin to SFO. Yep. Captain's like, hey kids, Wi-Fi's out. Sorry, see you in San Francisco, right? So I was like, okay. So I started, we take off, I started working. 15, 20 minutes later, we start descending. I'm like, we're in Dallas. Like, there's something wrong with the plane. They don't want to scare us, be like, oh, we have a hydraulic problem on engine 2, whatever. So they'll tell us on the ground, they're going to swap us out for some other equipment. Okay, fine. I look down, over 2 hours and 40 minutes have gone by. I had no idea. I didn't know if the drink cart had gone down the aisle. I didn't know the name of that guy in the seat next to me. Like, I was oblivious, but my designs were done and I liked them. And maybe you've done this. I had prepared myself mentally for get in the Uber, grab a sandwich in the hotel lobby, go up to the room, finish this stuff before the morning meeting. And reality, in the Uber, I called a buddy of mine. I was like, hey, man, I have a free night in SF. Do you want to have dinner? And it felt really nice to be ahead of my day for a change as opposed to chasing my day. Later, of course, as I read, what the smart people write, it's like, oh, that was a flow state. Why I didn't know that in college, man, I wish someone had told me about like, hey, there are some ways to get your brain to do this. And they've been like, they've done the fMRI research on like how flow works in the brain, the neuroscience. They're like, I remember there's one study with jazz musicians when they get into like improv and like a jazz trio sort of thing, and like the prefrontal cortex, you can see the activity sort of shut down, that self-awareness sort of thing kind of goes away. You're not fidgeting and thinking about yourself. You're part of the work, right? And part of the music in this case. And the fact that it's observable in terms of brain activity is super cool. So it's not like this, I don't know, man, sounds kind of hippy dippy. It's like, no, there's something there. Again, my son, when he goes off to college, heck yeah, we're gonna have a conversation about like, try this. It might really help, right? So this said, let's talk about like, what are some of those things? Number one, I'm gonna say there is a bunch of research on how music, how the oral environment helps you get there into that state. Now, for most people, the sweet spot is music that's 60 to 90 beats per minute, certain key signatures, non-vocals. You're not singing along with Blackpink or the Eagles or, Britney Spears, whoever your jam is. And, long melodic passages sort of thing. It's something that I found fascinating as we were developing, Suka, the site that I run, the community I run, it's all a Flowstate website, was like how much research there is in what helps people get there. Now, we all have the friend who's the outlier. Oh, I can only listen to 90s gangster rap. I have to listen to the Wicked soundtrack to get there. Okay, great. You do you. But for most people, it's that. And it helps you fall away from the details of the sound, the music, and into the work. I think you were about to say something a moment ago. What was it? I cut you off.
Now, you said Wicked, and I almost broke out into singing Popular.
I'm just saying, man. I got some friends that love that stuff, and some will admit it publicly, some will not. But yeah, so you get it. Like music, super interesting. I'll tell you, along the path of developing Suka, which is a flow state app, you can just run it, right? I thought, we should start from all the great research. Guess what? I have a bunch of friends who are film composers with time on their hands. Hey guys, here are kind of the guidelines. Could you write me like 1,000 hours of original music? Sure. So we do this. This is where Steven learns something from his members, right? Watch this. A buddy, Julian, who is a sound engineer. He works on the LucasArts, basically the Star Wars games up in Marin, right? Mm-hmm. He calls me up and he's like, hey man, I just got back from Nepal. Okay, good for you. He's like, it was my son's high school graduation present. Because I guess he did very well. It got into a good school or something, right? So he's like, what do you want? He's like, I want to go to Nepal. So he went, I just got back. I have to tell you, there was one day in Kathmandu where it poured rain so hard we couldn't leave. We couldn't go out. And it was this lush, delicious rain. And I had some of my recording equipment. So I recorded 2 hours of rain because we're stuck there. I thought it was kind of cool. I got back. I have it. It's an MP3 or WAV file, whatever. And I don't know what to do with it. Do you want it? I know you're developing that flow state thing. I was like, oh. So I was like, for free, Julian, let's just throw it up as a playlist in the middle of all the playlists. Because we have playlists that are like lo-fi, or upbeat, down tempo, like ambient sounds, like that. So I was like, doesn't hurt. We'll just quietly put in there. And I called it Himalayan Dream Rain. Like, we'll see if any people discover it. It became our third most popular playlist. I was like, how weird is that? I spent all this time and energy with these creative musicians being and Rain is becoming a hit on our platform. What's up with it? So, I know everyone's email address. I run the platform, right? So I saw some people were listening to it. I emailed them going, hey, could I chat with you? I'm just super curious about this. So a couple of people said, yeah, sure. Can I tell you, when I asked the question about hey, I'm just wondering, how does Rain help you get into a flow state? How is this you choose over this scientifically designed music we have, like Brain FM, Endel kind of quality music, right? I will tell you, if you reduce all the answers I got down to one idea, it was, oh, it evokes in me a memory of a time when I had to study, I had to do something, it was always raining. When I was growing up, I grew up at my grandma's house in Georgia. Around finals, it was always pouring rain, so we'd stay inside. So the rain reminds me, oh, my family has a lake house. We would always go there on spring break. And it was fascinating. It was all like, it takes me back to this time when I was studying inside and it would rain outside. And I was like, that's super cool. So what did I do? Hey, let's try other sounds, other nature sounds, right? So we threw up, I found someone recorded a stream in Japan. Okay, cool. There's a lake that has some weird indigenous bird called Emerald Lake in Canada. Okay, threw that up. And did some of these like naturescapes, we call them, because they weren't really like playlists. Some were middling hits. There wasn't a standout like The Rain. The Rain was like a huge one. And what did happen is there was a woman, she's actually a blogger you may know. She's a pretty well-known blogger in London. She reached out and she said, hey, who's ever running, Suka, you would love to talk to you. I was like, of course I'd love to chat. She said, I saw you're experimenting with these non-musical playlists. May I make a request? I'm all ears. Teach me. She said, I had a baby during the pandemic. I used to write my blog from this coffee shop, whatever, outside London. And I can't really go there with a 2-year-old or whatever. It's like my rhythm has changed, but there was something about the sounds of the coffee shop that really helped me feel like I was writing this cool blog and I was this artsy kind of like blogger that's different than sitting in my home kitchen writing the blog for me. She's like, any chance? And I was like, you know what? Let's look around. Found some dude in Vienna, Austria, who had recorded his local coffee shop for a couple hours. All the little the espresso machines and the plates kind of clattering in the background, that sort of murmur. So I threw it up there, and it also became really popular, I guess, with maybe writers who had that feeling of like the writers in the coffee shop and I'm in Paris, whatever. We call it Café Vienne. Just left it there. So I share these stories just to hopefully allow people to remember sound can be a really important way of evoking a memory of I'm concentrating, I'm getting into flow, right? And it doesn't have to be music. You can find it for yourself. It may be something else, or it may be the Wicked soundtrack. No judgments.
I am very much an audio person. Throughout my life, when I've been, upset, there's like 3, soundtracks that I'll put on. One for me that's been
Tell us.
Mission to Mars, Ennio Morricone.
Oh, Ennio Morricone is amazing.
That soundtrack for me will take me completely out of a bad mood, helps me think, and it's funny because I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah.
That last scene in the movie, which is the last part of the soundtrack, where he goes up into the spaceship, I have to close my eyes. And I get goosebumps from the top of my head to the tips of my toes because that music is so impactful.
Isn't that amazing?
And when you're talking about the rain and the coffee shop, what I'm hearing is commonality, right? Other than certain places throughout the planet, everybody knows the sound of rain, right?
Yes,
everybody has heard.
I have to interrupt you because I'm so curious. The Ennio Morricone reference warms my heart. Have you heard the soundtrack to Cinema Paradiso?
Yes.
And Elena's, have you seen the movie?
A long time ago.
Right, exactly. Won the Academy Award,
Yeah.
back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. The Elena's theme in that does that for me. That immediately makes me go, I am like 16 years old and I believe in love and I can't wait to have my first girlfriend. And like, it just, nothing touches how those notes string together. Back to you. Sorry.
Yeah. So the commonality of the experience, right? At this point, a lot of people know the sound of the coffee shop. Most people know the sound of rain.
Yep.
Where, while I love a babbling brook, not everybody has that experience in them.
True.
Right. So I think that's what, a lot of the success is around rain sounds, for sleeping and things like that. And it I very much use, environmental sounds for concentration and, and trying to bring on flow. But yeah, for me, that audio impact is very significant, and I would venture to say for most people.
I agree. Can I ask you a question?
Hmm?
When you do have the experience of dropping into flow, and let me, for those listening, say, most of the research shows it is not something where you just say, I'm in flow. It
Right.
is 15 to 23 minutes for your brain to kind of drop into that state. And if you get interrupted, it's another 15 to 23 to get back to it. It's not like you just flip back and forth, right? So
And it can be pretty jarring to get knocked out of it.
right, agreed. So
When you're in, all of a sudden it's just,
what are the things when you're doing great work and you're in flow? Because I love the flow practice. What are the things that grab you? We're like, oh, I got distracted. What are the distractions?
I have started putting my phone on do not disturb.
So
Because
phone distracting. Yes,
yeah,
with you.
and it's email, right? It's not so much Facebook, and I gotta go look, but an email comes in, so the beep of the email.
Mhm.
And I've even turned off the little bubble, notifications
the
that tell you how many
notification bubble,
emails
yeah.
you have, because I can't have a little red bubble anywhere.
Yeah.
That's my OCD. And if I hear it ring and I see a couple of bubbles, that's it. I'm done. So I've turned off those
I
bubbles.
love you saying that. I'm so with you on that. Keep going. This is great.
I've turned them, all of those notifications off. I only have the absolute minimum of notifications, because at this point, we are trained to respond to all of those interactions. And if I'm trying to get something done, I forgot to put my phone on do not disturb, and a call started coming in. So it's like, how do I get this out of there?
Yeah.
So eliminating those distractions so that you can focus, right, and not have the interruption.
And you said we're trained to respond to that. Let me add to that every vibration, every pixel of color, every sound has also been A/B tested to see what you naturally respond to the most. Like across
Right.
8 billion interactions, they know exactly this vibration or this sound is the one that will get you to pick up that phone and pull you away. So it's amazing when you think about the level of attention paid to how do I distract you?
So, Stephen, you talked about how, all of the tones and vibrations are
Mhm.
designed to engage us. So talk a little bit more about that. What does that look like?
Well, here's the funny thing. I think you and I have some commonality around a belief that really informs how we relate to others, how we lead teams, which is I believe we all have something great inside us. And the question of this lifetime is not if you'd have it, it's rather, will you get it out before you die? And if you view yourself as a leader, or you viewed yourself just thinking about how you are going to manage your life, and you look at your team, you say, okay, my job here is not to make sure you turn in your TPS reports by 10 a.m. Friday, right? My job here is to look at each of you and go, how do I elicit the greatness from you? How do I release that? Give you the tools and the incentives and the encouragement, sometimes the negative feedback, whatever it is you need to release that thing, because that great thing inside you, it may be the next great American novel. It may be a restaurant concept. It could be an app. It could be, a romantic comedy movie, whatever that thing is. The graveyards are full of people who don't release their greatness. They don't get it out, right? Now, let's talk about the weird incentives in the world. And this gets back to your question. If you look at the stock market, most of the trillion-dollar companies.
Started.
What?
Don't get me started.
No, I'm just saying, if you look at the largest market cap companies, very frequently their business model is steal your life.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop. That's it. That is what they do for a living. And it used to be 10 years ago, they were kind of embarrassed about it. Like Zuckerberg would get called to Congress because they'd done some awful thing at Facebook. And, he'd kind of laugh. He's like, oh, Senator, Facebook's just here to show grandma, videos of her grandchildren. Ha, 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 Now there is no embarrassment. Like, you listen on a shareholder call, is straight up listen. We hired the top engineers. We have the money for the best designers. We hired casino gambling experts, behavioral economists, paid them top dollar, more than what they can make at any university anywhere else. And we set them simply on the task of, how could we keep people on our platform one more second every day? And this is how well we did. By the way, the lives that we stole of all these people scrolling and double tapping, we call that shareholder value in the report you're reading. And we have new techniques I want to talk you through that next quarter we're going to deploy to steal more of everyone's lives, which is more shareholder value for you, right? It's astounding when you listen to them now. And the thing is, it may sound kind of abstract that way, but it is as if like Zuckerberg were to call you up and go, Julio, man, can I have your life? And I'm going to sell it to these advertisers and I will keep the money. I will give you some dancing cat videos, dude. Is that cool? How does that sound? Is that a good deal for your life? Because if you end up 80 years old on the sofa, scrolling and double tapping, you've bought him his next 450-foot yacht.
Absolutely.
And he doesn't care that you're the guy going, oh yeah, I could have written that book. Oh yeah, I had that idea for a restaurant. I wanted to write that script. I just never got around to it. He doesn't care. He wants you to say that stuff because he got your life and he turned that into money and that bought him another yacht. And there's some people who are going to go down that road. There are some teams that'll go down that road. That's just the way it is. I think it's criminal. But if you stand up, you say like, I have something great to do, or I want to lead a team to actually release their greatness, then you certainly need the tools, because when on that rope for your life, on one side of the tug of war are like $1 trillion companies with the smartest people. And the other side of the rope, it's you. You sure better have some allies that are helping you pull the rope back. I'm sorry, I cut you off. You're going to say something a second ago.
No, what's coming to mind in this is personal fulfillment, right? Because so many people don't have hobbies anymore. They don't have a lot of enrichment. So they find that enrichment, where it is designed to be given to you, in cat videos.
Yep.
And that's not a great place to be.
This is very true. So let's talk about, because this is something you can tell I feel passionately about this. And I'll bring it down a notch. But as we were designing Suka, which is the thing I do now, which by the way, I'm more proud of than any movie I worked on, than any startup I did. This, I think, actually helps people do something great, right? So we were thinking, how do we address this? I'll be super honest. What you said about your phone, I have exactly the same problem. It manifests for me this way. I may be coding something. I may be writing a blog post for a blog, whatever it is. And when I find something frustrating, the build keeps failing. Keep reading the first 2 paragraphs of this blog post. I know I have to rewrite it. My hand, without my thinking, like muscle memory, will reach for my phone. And it'll just say to me like, Steven, that's so frustrating. Like, why don't you just quickly check your WhatsApp and see if, did Laura write something back? Oh, you're going to see Eric next week. Let's see if he responded at what restaurant. And it is never a minute.
Yeah.
That I'll pick it up for a minute and just like reset my brain, turns into 20 or 30 minutes. Same thing with YouTube. It's like, there's some component that I want to use in this thing I'm writing. I don't know how to use it, but some generous engineer made a 3-minute video about how to use that component. I'll watch that 3-minute video, which then becomes, at the end, YouTube goes, Steven, I know you really well. Here's some candy. Which I am actually. Here's a video on how to make crispy skinned salmon. Pan-fried salmon. And I'm like, I've been working on that. This is so out. I should watch that 3-minute video. There's something about like the avionics of the A380, which I find fascinating. And I just go, you know what? Sure, I'll click on that 5-minute cooking video. It'll be helpful tonight. Oh, the avionics thing, 12 minutes. Fascinating. I should watch that. And half an hour goes. When do I feel the pain of that? It's not 11 a.m. when I did it. It's at 6 p.m. where I'm like, man, where did the day go? I was busy all day. I didn't get the big thing done, right? And how do you combat that? And I'll tell you what we did. This may not be the perfect solution, but we looked at a lot of different solutions. And there are some great apps out there. Chrome extensions where you can block websites, Freedom, Cold Turkey, There are some phone blockers. There are phone accessories you can buy that brick your phone, like lots of things. where I came from was a little different than that. I thought, you know what? Everyone who's coming to Suka to get into flow, like you and I are perfect like Suka members, right?
Yep.
They're adults. These are not people who need like child locks on the fridge so they don't have, whatever is in the fridge they shouldn't eat, So when you start a session, when you hit play in Suka, just like, the music starts and then a QR code comes up. You can tap with your phone, put your phone down. If I touch my phone while I'm working, while I'm in a session, my smart assistant in my laptop says, "Hey, Steven, I see you on your phone. Is that helping you?" And sometimes just like a friend sitting next to me going like, "Hey man, like, do we want to be done at 6?" That's all I need because I'm an adult. I just need a little tap going, "Hey, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy who wastes his morning on, Instagram? Or do you want to be the guy at 6 o'clock who's like, oh, cool, let's go to dinner. I'm done." And that became the right level of the sense of, I have a friend sitting next to me. Just like if you were sitting there, you're like, come on, Steven, same thing with websites. I can say, hey, YouTube is really bad. If after 5-10 seconds, I'm still in YouTube or whatever site, a little modal comes up and just says, hey man, is Reddit helping you? And I get that choice to choose who I want to be. And that I thought was the right level of, hey man, if you want to do your great thing, we will help you. We're not going to be your mom, but we're going to give you the tools to say, you know what, I want to create that $1 billion business, or I want to lead a $1 billion team. Not, I want to be the guy who ends up on the sofa, retired, scrolling and double tapping and saying what he could have done with his life.
I love that you're doing that with your platform, because people natively or intuitively, I guess, are starting to do that for themselves. There's been a trend of people going back to things like flip phones,
right,
to eliminate all of those distractions built into the phone. So they're forcibly, separating themselves, and they don't have the willpower, to turn off notifications and set do not disturb mode. So, the solution for them is just get a dumb phone that does nothing but, communicate from a voice perspective. And if that's what it takes for them, God bless them.
Right.
But, your platform, I think, is much more powerful in helping, those individuals to move forward from that.
And the thing is, like, when you read what Mihai wrote years ago and research since then, and Cal Newport's done some amazing stuff on just how deep work should work versus shallow work and stuff like that, right? When you think about what he said, where he's like, hey man, time kind of falls away, distractions fall away. You think about, okay, how can music help me with that? How can this little distraction blocker help me with these things so I can get to the part of, I did my best work in a short amount of time. And I felt, like you said, and I've experienced, I felt uplifted at the end, not burned out.
Yeah.
And to give that gift to your team and to yourself, I don't know what more you want. Like, that's what we all aspire to. Do some great work, and at the end of it, feel like, I feel great.
So, Steven, what tips and recommendations do you have for our listeners to get into, more of a conscious approach towards flow, and maybe eliminating some of these distractions?
I appreciate you asking that. Of course, anyone who wants to try the platform, please try it. It's 3 days for free. You can experiment with it a lot. But I'll tell you, the thing that I really feel strongly about is this: is in the morning, before you pick up your phone, before you make breakfast, before you do whatever, if you can start a habit of thinking, what is the one thing I could do today, not a general goal over the next year, what's the one thing I could do today that would move my life forward? And at the end of the day, you hold yourself accountable to that. Did I do that one thing? Man, if you develop that practice after a month, your life will have changed, because it is very easy once you dive into the day to just sort of be blown about like a boat on the waves, with a loose tiller, a loose sail. But if you go into saying like, hey man, I'm not going to do 10 things. I'm going to do one thing somewhere in the day that moves my life forward. it is remarkable. So that is my free tip. You don't need anybody's app. You don't need anything other than just a little bit of intention to change your life.
That is a huge tip. And if our listeners take anything, that alone is money. So I appreciate you for that. So that brings us to the end of From Stuck to Scaled. It has been wonderful having you on here, Steven. Thank you so very much.
For people.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of messages that our listeners can take and can definitely, implement in their own lives and their businesses. Cultivating a strong and people culture takes a lot, and just, helping focus a little bit, I think is tremendous. For more insights like these, don't forget to subscribe oh, wait a minute. Before I do that, Steven, where can our listeners find you?
Two things. If I've said anything interesting that someone wants to read more about, hey man, who's this Cal Newport guy? What's the Hungarian guy's name? Who's near? You're welcome to drop me an email. I respond to all my emails. Steven, Steven, at thesuka, TheSukha.co. Right? I'll get back to you. I'll send you a link. Here's a blog post you could read, learn more about it. And if someone wants to try the flow practice, go to thesuka, TheSukha.co. Sign up. You get 3 days free. Hopefully it works for you. Drop in the group chat and say hello. Be like, hey, I heard you on Stuck to Scaled. I'm here to try it.
Awesome. Thank you, Steven. So now for more insights like these, don't forget to subscribe and tune in next time. Until then, keep transforming your challenges into stepping stones for growth. I'm Julio Gonzalez, and this is where we turn obstacles into opportunities. Thank you so very much again, Steven.
Bye, y'all.
You've been listening to From Stuck to Scaled, growth strategies for small and mid-sized businesses, produced by Optocution LLC. For more information, tools, and resources, check out our website www.redefinepossible.co/podcast.